have really been living through some strange times. I remember early on in the shutdown, hearing a Christian woman speaking about the situation and reminding us of Romans 8, of how God is working out his purposes for the good of those who love him, and the good that it's talking about in verse 29 is making us more like Jesus. And so the challenge that she threw out to her listeners was, how is this whole situation making you more like Jesus? And if it's not doing that, if at the end of all of this you're not more like Jesus, then you will have wasted this opportunity. And so I've been trying to use that as the lens through which to read what's going on at the moment. And I've found that in these last few months, God has been teaching me things particularly about perseverance. And he's been doing that through the women in my church. Like lots of people, I've found this time to be a challenge. I've struggled with different aspects. I've struggled with the isolation, especially of the shutdown period. I'm an introvert by nature, but even for me, that was too much isolation. But as I rang around the women in my church just to check in on how they were going, I found that there was one group in particular that was just rocking this period of isolation, and that was the older widows. And they were able to be fairly calm in the face of what was happening. And that was because they had learned over time to deal with this issue. They'd been through a period of great loss and sadness and grief and isolation for many of them. And yet they had learned to trust God through all of that. And so that allowed them now to be calm in the face of what was going on. Another thing I found hard has just been that my emotions have been all over the place in a way that I'm not used to. I'm usually fairly level, but I've found that my emotions have been really hard to regulate. It's just been up and down and all over the place. And as I was sharing this with one of the families in my church, one of the people in the family said, Libby, welcome to my world. That's what life is always like for me. It's up and down all the time. And as I kind of thought about her, the time she's had with the difficulties in mental health and the way that she has grown in her relationship with God through all of that, not in spite of it, but through all of that, I realized that she had really gained in maturity. And even though she was only half my age, she was much more mature than I was in this whole area. And I could learn from her by watching her example. And another thing that's been hard about this whole situation over the last few months has just been the unpredictability of everything. It's felt chaotic. It's really hard to plan things because things are changing all the time. And as I was thinking about another lady from our church who has recently arrived in Australia, she's a refugee. Her last few years have been nothing but chaos. And yet, when she speaks about her relationship with God, there is joy and gratitude. And I realized that I could learn a lot from her and watching how she has learned perseverance through what she's been through. The verse that has spoken to me through all of this is James chapter 1 verse 2, and I'll read it for us. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. I think certainly these times have been testing for me and for my faith. But I have been learning things about perseverance, and it's been my sisters in Christ who've been teaching that to me as I've seen them. They have modelled to me how to persevere. And perseverance by definition is something that can't be learned quickly. This COVID situation may go on for quite some time to come, so I might have lots of more opportunities to learn perseverance. But if at the end of all this I have learned more about perseverance, then I will be more like Jesus, because we owe everything to the fact that Jesus persevered for us. And so if that's the outcome of all this, that I understand that better, then the time that I've spent over the last few months will have been invaluable. I wonder what the things are that you have been learning over the last few months. I'd love to hear all those stories. Anyway, thanks for listening.